Chapter 7 of Spiritual Leadership deals with how leaders lead. Blackaby is not dealing with the style of leadership, but rather is dealing with the essentials that every leader must have for leadership. Blackaby asks the fundamental question at the start of the chapter that all leaders must ask. How can I move people to do what needs to be done? These questions can be asked and new visions and plans can be drafted, but it will not prove helpful until the essentials are accomplished. It's not the plans, but performance that makes a person a great leader. Lee Iacocca is the first example Blackaby gives, and Lee Iacocca came from Ford with a great reputation. He had the best resume that could have possibly ever been formulated for a CEO of a major company. He had such great success at Ford that people demanded to give him respect. He was given respect everywhere he went at the Chrysler Corporation. But he had the task of getting Chrysler out of a $160 million debt. Was his reputation going to do it? No. He was going to have to step forward and take action. He was going to have to start doing. Stop being the leader and start doing what leaders do. It is to be considered, in order to be considered a successful leader, you need to know how to lead. How does a spiritual leader lead? He leads by taking these four essential steps. Leaders pray. Blackaby starts off by saying nothing of eternal significance can happen apart from God. To further prove this point, let's look at what Christ said. He said, apart from me, you can do nothing. He said this in John 15:5. Prayer is the most important thing that a leader can do in order to move people onto God's agenda. Some people say that prayer is too passive. They say, I like to take a more proactive approach rather than a reactive approach. Say that prayer doesn't accomplish anything. What does Scripture say about that? During the period of exile in Israel's history, Nehemiah heard the news of the walls of Jerusalem being torn down. And Nehemiah's response wasn't, let's go out and start looking for things, let's start gathering materials, and let's get a core group of workers and let's go and get this accomplished. No, his first response was prayer. Leaders need to learn how to pray first and then start acting. Every spiritual leader should start with prayer. Step 2. Leaders work hard. One of the problems people tend to have when they're put in these positions of spiritual leadership is the idea of superiority. Authority does not mean superiority. The spiritual leader should never think of himself as being above performing any task or job, no matter how humiliating it is, no matter whether it's cleaning the toilets or changing diapers in the nursery. This leader needs to be a servant. If the person is trying to model Christ as their perfect leader, they'll see servant leadership. Christ fed the 5,000. He also skipped meals so that he could continue ministering. Christ also states in Matthew 20:28, even as the Son of Man came not into the world to be ministered unto, but to minister and to give his life a ransom for many. Christ didn't come here to be ministered to. The God of all the ages didn't come to be ministered to, but rather to minister to others. We need to learn this concept of servant leadership. We are not above working hard. Leaders need to learn how to work hard. Blackaby states that some people look for easy paths to leadership positions. They want positions of influence, but they don't want to put in their time in the trenches. The bottom line is that leadership is work. I'm going to say it again. The bottom line is that leadership is work. Spiritual leaders must be willing to put in the hard work if they expect to move people towards the end goal. A spiritual leader must work hard. Step 3. Leaders communicate. According to Blackaby, the key to successful communication is clarity. People often get caught up in verbose words and technical terms, but we don't need to be technical. We just need to be clear. Effective communication only takes place when the message is clear. Blackaby challenges the communicator to be continually trying to sharpen his communication skills. Good communicators are always trying to expand their vocabulary, they're always reading great thinkers, and they're immersed in the scriptures. They need to stay fresh and growing in their skills instead of become stagnant with predictable sermons. We've all heard that predictable sermon. The speaker always goes back to the exact same thing over and over and over. We need to stay fresh and stay current. When people think of Winston Churchill, they're reminded of his great ability to motivate people through speeches. This ability did not come natural to Winston Churchill, but it was a result of hard work. You see, Winston Churchill had a speech impediment when he was a young man, and the only way that he was going to get to where he could speak normal, much less become the great speaker that he is or was, is through hard work. He had to overcome his disabilities in order to become a great orator, and that was through hard work and consistent work. Spiritual leaders must learn to communicate clearly in order to be able to motivate people to follow God's agenda. The people cannot practice what they hear on Sunday morning if they don't understand the message. Communication must be clear. Communication is essential. The fourth and final step that Blackaby gives is leaders must maintain positive attitudes. When going through hard times, people do not want to follow a pessimist. When a person goes to the pastor saying their house just burnt down, they're looking for comfort and somebody to console them, not somebody to add insult to injury. If someone goes to the pastor saying, "Pastor, my brother, he just had a gas grill blow up and it just burned his face," the pastor shouldn't respond saying, "I hate gas grills. They should always use charcoal." It's ridiculous. We don't think that way, and we don't respond that way. So why should a pastor or a spiritual leader be a pessimist? People look to the spiritual leader for encouragement in the hard times, not discouragement. The natural reaction for people when they're going through hard times is discouragement. This does not mean that we have to have a Joel Osteen smile all the time by telling people God will bless you. Rather, it means that leaders inspire confidence, not fear. The sight of the leader should inspire people to feel comforted. President Ronald Reagan was shot one evening as he left the Hilton Hotel. The assassination attempt let the bullet lodge just a little less than an inch from his heart. When he first saw his wife, the first thing he said to her was, "Honey, I forgot to duck." You can imagine the pain and torment that this lady's going through because her husband's on the verge of dying. And here all I can say is make a joke. Leaders need to be able to inspire people by their demeanor, not drive them to depression. If the entire church has a subscription to Prozac by the time the spiritual leader gets done, the pastor is doing something wrong. A smile and a little humor travel a long way when dealing with people. There is a point in time during a leader's ministry that they are going to have to stop being a leader and start performing the role of a leader. The leader must pray, because without prayer it is impossible to have the power of God. The leader must work hard, because without serving there will be a lack of true followers. The leader must communicate well, because his followers need direction. The leader must have a positive attitude, because the people need to be inspired to move. In order to be a spiritual leader, you must learn how to lead.